Larry, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I'm really grateful. I know that you personally are on a quest to, or on a mission to help people find as much joy in their life as possible. So I'm curious. I suppose we all have something that happened in our lives that create for this, call it pivotal moment when we realize that we want to do something differently. We all have our own story of how we came to find our mission and purpose in life. So what was it that happened in your life, Larry, that led you to want to seek more joy and help other people do the same?
That's a great question. First of all, thanks for having me on your show. So,
Absolutely.
and for asking me to dig into some of your joy issues, which I think we can get into before we're done. So, what happened in my life? It's crazy because I ended up going to Africa in 2012 with a nonprofit that was started here in San Diego. And the woman who started it said, "What happened in your life that caused you to be so passionate about making an impact in the world?"
Mhm.
And I've spent a lot of time in deep reflection. I've spent a lot of time in meditation. I've spent a lot of time seeking. And I met a friend a little over a year and a half ago, and he's a card reader, astrologist.
Mhm.
And he read my cards for me, and he uses a deck of cards. And my birthday is September 10th. And the cards for September 10th are the Ace of Diamonds, the Ace of Hearts, and the Queen of Hearts. So the Ace of Diamonds is my sun card. The Ace of Hearts, I believe, is my moon card. And my first planet card is the Queen of Hearts. So I was born a leader, which I've never wanted, but people keep finding ways to ask me to take leadership positions. So that's the Ace of Diamonds. The woman I'm dating now is the Two of Diamonds, and my daughter's the Five of Diamonds, based on their birthdays. So there's a lot to this stuff.
Mhm.
But the Queen of Hearts is the philanthropy card. And I do not have philanthropic parents, and I do not have philanthropic siblings, but I've always wanted to give back.
Mhm.
And you ask me where my joy comes from and where all this stuff has been coming from. It's mostly from my desire and need to give back and be part of something greater than myself. That's where it's always come from.
Mhm.
So my first big shift in my life came in 1993. I was working at this company that most people will know called the General Electric Company. So I was a GE.
Mhm.
I'd been there for almost 4.5 years. And I got invited to go do a project with 85 inner city kids in Colorado. So I'm living in New York. I get on an airplane. I show up in Colorado with 12 of the kids were from the Henry Street Settlement on the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And I show up in Aspen, Colorado. And at the end of that week, we teach these kids to ski. And they're in this gymnasium. There's 85 of them. And they're having a blast and living life. And life is beautiful.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting there in this hallway. I could see my breath. I'm cold and I'm just watching this. And I'm realizing that I'm 29 years old. I'm working for the number one company in the world. I live in New York City. I have a company car, and I'm not nearly as happy as these kids that I'm seeing.
Mhm.
And they had so much less than I did. I grew up in a middle class white neighborhood in the New York metropolitan area,
Mhm.
and I was given every opportunity to have the life I wanted, and I was miserable. And
Mhm.
I got back on Saturday night, and Monday I went to work, and Monday night I called the guy who hired me. He was no longer my boss. I got promoted, and I got a new boss, and the boss, it just wasn't the right fit for me anymore.
Mhm.
And I called the guy who hired me, and I said, he was my mentor. I'm just like, "Vince, I'm done." It's like, "What do you mean you're done?" I said, "I can't do this anymore. I just spent a week with these kids, and they're happier than I am, and that shouldn't be." So
Mhm.
that was 33 years ago.
Wow.
And I've been on this journey ever since. So the first decision I made is that I can no longer work for a corporation. So I've been self-employed for almost 33 years.
Wow.
And I figured out how to make money. So the money part came first. And I don't have tons of money. It's not like I'm independently wealthy, but I'm very comfortable.
Mhm.
And I know how to make money. I've learned how to make money. And now that I'm getting back to what is at my core, at my core, I'm a coach. And I
Mhm.
was able to build some businesses because I was a good coach.
Mhm.
I was good at recruiting players, and I was good at helping people understand where their problems were.
Mhm.
And when I was able to help people figure out where their problems were, if there were things that I can help them with, I did. And if it was things that I couldn't help them with, I found others to help them.
Mhm.
So, first motivational program, 1992, before I left GE, Tony Robbins. That was fascinating. Defined a lot of things for myself, defined success, defined the priorities of my life. So, what was most important? So, most of my life's decisions have been based on priorities. But this all comes back to this idea of who am I? And this journey towards joy, every time I've given back in big ways, like really gone out of my way to give back. So that second big trip was in 2012 when I went to Africa. I went to Uganda and Kenya, and we were bringing computers. This woman asked me what happened in my life that made me so philanthropic. I believe that it's because I was born that way. I don't believe that anything happened in my life that was so horrific. I mean, I was a depressed kid and I grew up without joy. So that's one of the things I've heard people on podcasts talking about happiness and joy. And one host asked a really great question is, have you been happy your whole life? And one guy said, yes, I've been happy my whole life. I'm like, it's hard to talk about happiness when you haven't felt pain and depression and sadness and the other side of it. If you've been happy your whole life and you study it, it's like me explaining to a woman like what it's like to be a woman. I'll never know what it's like to have a menstrual cycle. I'll never know what it's like to give birth to a child, although I did have a kidney stone and they say that's close. But I'll never know these things. And it's the same thing if you've never been deeply sad and depressed. Finding joy, if you've always been happy and joyful, is to me not the journey. For me, the journey is from I grew up depressed. My dad went broke when I was 10. So I lived with a lot of scarcity for 60 plus years of my life. I'm now 62 and a half. And I no longer come from scarcity because I've realized that scarcity is a mental construct and that my soul, this is the part that I think you're getting to in all of your journey. I'm not sure where you are yet, but I just saw an amazing video from Jim Carrey. I'll talk about later, but you ask where my journey comes from. I get back from Africa, and the same thing happened to me in Africa that happened in Aspen, Colorado 20 years earlier. I saw all these people that had so much less than I did that were so much happier than I was. And I'm trying to figure out what it is that they had that I didn't. And people kept telling me, Larry, I bet you can't wait to go back to Africa. I'm like, yes, I can wait to go back to Africa. That was in 2012. I have not been back. I don't need to go to Africa. What I wanted was what they felt.
Right.
They lived with joy. They lived with a sense of happiness and contentness that was beautiful. And they were post-war, 5 years post-Coney. John Coney was the warlord that created the army with the kids, and it was devastating to northern Uganda. So these people are 5 years post-war. They're just beautiful and loving life. And it was so much different than the cities. Kampala, Entebbe, just a city. But when you get out to the rural villages, and we brought computers to these rural villages, I ended up meeting a gentleman, which is all in my book, The Joy Molecule, who started me on this path. I ended up giving him some money to become a pilot, and Armstrong is now a good friend and lives here in the States. And I was responsible for a lot of that, my ex-wife and I. And I went through this process of trying to figure out what I experienced. And 7 weeks after I got back from Africa, I was asked 3 questions at a conference that totally changed my life. And those 3 questions is, what is poverty? Who gets to define it? And why are we trying to fix it? And I kind of lost it. And I'm like, okay, did I just see poverty or did I just see impoverishment? And they're very different.
Yeah, I agree.
And then who gets to define it? So why are the people that are unhappy in the United States trying to fix happy people that don't have clean water and don't have good food sources and have malaria and all these other things, yet their way of being in the world was so beautiful. So what am I trying to fix? And the last question is, why are we trying to fix it? And I think we're trying to fix it because we want to make them look more like us so we can feel better about our less fulfilled lifestyle. So I kind of came back and I did a TED Talk a year and a half later in 2014 called The Disconnected Connected World. And it was all about this concept of, what did I see? And I saw a connection. And one of my gifts as a creature on this planet is I have a skill set that allows me to connect people to each other. And I meet people come past my path and they tell me who they are and what they want. And other people have come past in the past that meet that criteria, or sometime in the near future, I'm going to meet, I could tell you story after story where this creature, me, this being, which is not me. I'm in this body. So
Mm.
I'm a vehicle, and I'm a being inside this vehicle that has access to a mind and has access to my feelings, and I get to decide what I do with that
Yeah.
information. And I think that's the human condition that we're stuck with, is that most of the people, including myself for 60 plus years of my life, believe that my thoughts and my feelings were me. And Jim Carrey did this little thing. He says, I played a lot of characters in my life, including Jim Carrey.
Mm. Wow.
Jim Carrey was just the character he didn't choose. Jim Carrey was the character that was given to him and he created over his lifetime. So we are characters, and that character is our identity. And my instinct, based on your original question in our email exchange when we first started this conversation, is joy is not found in outward pursuit.
Yeah.
Joy is found internally in understanding what we are, who we are, and why we are, and finding peace on this planet.
That's beautiful, Larry. Wow. You're giving me so much to think about, but in the best way. Like, it triggers so much excitement in me, because these are the questions that I like to answer. These are the questions that I want to dig deeper into and understand. So thank you so much for sharing all of that and for bringing that to the table. A couple of things I just want to add, because you or just want to shoot out there. Fellow Virgo,
Sure.
you're also Virgo. I'm also Virgo.
Mhm.
That was the first thing I noticed when you were telling your birthday. And so I can relate to a couple of the things that you're talking about. And very, I remember reading this post not too long ago. I don't know if you're familiar with Modern Impact. It's a podcast by Chris Williamson, I think his name is. And he was saying that, why is it that everyone who was ever super wealthy and had everything we think we want always said that money wasn't everything, but yet everyone is on that pursuit and have to figure it out for themselves? It doesn't matter what other people tell us, we will want to go on that pursuit for ourselves. It's so interesting. And I love that you brought that up as a part of your own journey too, that you essentially had everything people strive for, but that wasn't what brought you joy. So thank you for bringing that up. I think that is important to emphasize, because it's true what you're saying. It's Joy is so much more than the pursuits and the things that we have. It's who we are and what we do with it and how we show up in the world. And I am coming to understand that more and more for every day. And what I have reflected on in the past week, maybe, is that the most joy that I'm finding in my everyday life right now is in the present moment, just in the right here and the right now.
That's all there is.
Yeah, because I've
The
spent
rest of it's a
so
mental construct. The rest of
right.
it is our mind creating things that aren't in existence. So when you asked me in our email exchange before about you finding joy, the issue that we face, for me, the issue that I faced around, it's about peace.
Mm-hmm.
And joy is a knowing. Happiness is a state of mind based on outside circumstances. That's my definition.
Yeah.
Happiness is getting my needs met. So it's
Mm-hmm.
about needs. And we can have a whole conversation about Abraham Maslow and his hierarchy of needs, which Maslow never created. Now, the hierarchy of needs, the pyramid, was created by some consultants that wanted to use his research in the business community. Maslow was talking about human evolution, and he didn't stop at self-actualization. He went to self-transcendence.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Maslow was talking about the needs we have. We need food, we need water. Food, water, shelter, safety, love, air, and health.
Mm-hmm.
And for some of us, me included, we need sex. But
Mm-hmm.
other than those basic needs, everything
Mm-hmm.
else is a want.
Yeah.
So Maslow's hierarchy wasn't a hierarchy of needs. It was a hierarchy created based on his research.
Right.
And I think if you look back at it today, I don't think he would smile on the hierarchy that was given, he was given attribution for. So I think what he was thinking, and this is my TED talk, I challenged Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I said, maybe it's a plate, but the plate analogy didn't work either. And now 13 years later, I think it's a ladder.
Yeah.
And I think what we're doing is we're ascending this ladder, that at the base of the ladder is survival, like real survival, food, water, shelter, and safety.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people in your culture, my culture, that they say they're in survival mode, but that's more keeping up with the Joneses survival.
Yeah.
They have a roof over their head, they have water, and
Yeah.
they have safety. They have governments that protect them.
Yeah.
They're not in survival mode, but they're in modern survival mode, which is real. But let's understand what it is. The
Yeah.
middle of the middle of the ladder is self-esteem and love and belonging. That's all about me. That's me looking at the world and saying, I want the world to be a certain way, in order for me to feel loved and for me to have my own self-esteem. But that's still my identity.
Mm-hmm.
That's not me.
Yeah.
Self-actualization and self-transcendence is about stop looking outside of ourselves and start looking inside of ourselves to figure out who we are.
Yeah.
Now, the I. So there's a part of us that has nothing to do with our mind. So the analogy I'll use, and I use it often, is I am the sky, my thoughts are the clouds, and the weather's my feelings. So the clouds will come and go. Some will be dark, some will be light, sometimes there'll be none. But the sky is always above the clouds. And if I realize that I am the viewer of the clouds, I'm always above the clouds. And I have every year, a lot of people do goals. I do intentions for the year. And my intention for last year was skillful mind, quiet mind. Not to own my mind and not to shut it up because it's not evil. But most of the negative self-talk is gone from my brain because my being, the sky, has told my thoughts, which are the clouds, dark ones, you're not allowed here anymore. There's no reason for you to come because I know that you're just my mind playing games on me. You're not me. So I can look at them and say, I'm joyful because I'm at peace. Now, trouble's going to come. Things are going to happen. But then my mind gets to analyze what's happening. Now, things happening outside of myself can affect my being, but I can still live with joy. I can still know that I'm grateful. So what I've learned is that the sky has a handful of attributes. So my being is 100% love. It's 100% abundant. It's 100% grateful. It's 100% neutral. And it's 100% present. So it's got those 5 attributes. When people say they need to do a gratitude list, that gets back to the identity, trying to convince my identity that I'm grateful. But if you get to this place where your being is viewing your thoughts and your feelings, then there's no more gratitude list. You just live in gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. There's something about embodying it and not make it this actionable step. It's just who you are.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, fake it till you make it. But all you're doing is convincing your mind that you're more than what you think you are. And the truth is, you're more than what you think you are. So if you think you're more than what you think you are, then you think you're spiritual. And I did that for decades. And I'll be very candid. I've been very candid with most people. I've done a bunch of psilocybin work and I've done a lot of work to get outside of myself. And there are times when I did. And that has informed me as to what I am. So if I know what I am. So in my book, I talk about what, who, and why, and it's a different what. The what in my book is what do I do? So if you live in the United States, which I'm not sure if you've ever been here, but when I traveled, I pulled my kids out of school. So we went to Africa in 2012. 2.5 years later, I pulled my kids out of school when they were in 7th and 9th grade, and we traveled around the world. And in the United States, one of the first questions just about everybody asks is, what do you do? And when I traveled for 6 months around the world, nobody asked me what I did. Everybody wanted to know who I was and why I was doing what I was doing, taking my kids out of school. They didn't want to know how I got the funds to be able to do it. They just wanted to know who I was. And in the United States, it's all about what. So the what is, what do you do? What's your favorite team? Things of that nature. The who is, what is your values and essence and how do you show up in the world? And your why is your reason for being. And to me, those three things together, they have to be you need to be aware of all 3.
Yeah.
Because the what by itself is just a walking resume. The who by itself is deeper, but it's not connected to itself. It's often its own world. And why? So having a real strong purpose without knowing who you are and without having a skill set to do anything with it is pretty useless as well. But the 3 atoms, what, who, and why, make up this big atom of joy, which is now the joy molecule. So when you have joy, when you live in peace, when you know exactly what you do, who you are, and why you exist, then you live with joy. It's just an inner knowing. And it's a knowing that I'm more than what I thought I was.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of it, you end up with this mind that will take you wherever it wants to take you if you let it.
Yeah.
And my instincts tell me it based on some of the listenings I've done to your earlier podcasts, is that there's still a mind in there that wants you to believe that it is the boss. And the joy comes when you know, not think, when you know really know that you're the sky that has access to clouds and weather. But when
Yeah.
you think you're the sky, it's still the clouds ruling.
Yeah. There's the difference between and kind of like what I was mentioning earlier, the difference between embodying it and I guess the process of fake it till you make it. I think a lot. I remember there was a long period of my life where I had this mentality of fake it till you make it, but it was also kind of necessary to understanding myself better. Because I think there is a process in which you, when you, because I mean, it also comes back to patterns and habits. A lot of the things that we do, we're even not even conscious of doing it. A lot of it is taught behavior or mirrored behavior that we have gotten from somewhere, but typically how we were shaped when we were
Mhm.
raised. And I really needed to go on this introspective journey to understand what are my decisions and what are like influence decisions. What is me really, and what am I doing because that cool girl is doing it, or because that's what the cool guy thinks is cool, like, you know, like something shallow.
Or your parents told you, or your
Or
teachers told you, or
exactly, yeah.
your siblings taught you, or it all comes from when it's coming from the outside.
Yeah, exactly. And I wanted to get closer to the truth of what do I want to do? Who do I want to be? And what impact do I want to have? And that is what becoming secure, that is the space in which becoming secure was born, the podcast, because I knew that a lot of the decisions that I made and the choices were coming from a place of attachment to things that I didn't even, that I, like, in retrospect today don't even value anymore, which is interesting. When what I wanted to do was to understand my attachment to all of these things and why they were there, to understand how I could get closer to who I really am. And the process of making the podcast has been challenging. It's something about, you kind of have to be who you say you are when you're broadcasting it to the world, right? It's I kind of started it somewhat as an accountability partner so that I could consistently ensure that I focus on acting as though, like, acting as I preach, essentially. I remember someone told me along the way that, because it started when I was posting on Instagram, for instance. It could just be like some super smart quote or something impactful, and I would post that stuff, and then someone would call me out and be like, I see you posting all of these things, but you're not living what you preach. And that stuck me in a way that I was like, when it hurts, it's probably because it's some truth to it. And I had to reflect on that. I don't know if that's some Virgo nature or something, some part of womanhood, or maybe just even a part of being human
Well,
that
being
you,
human.
yeah, exactly, that you just want to fix it or figure it out. At least I did not want to be a victim. I wanted to ensure that I didn't fall into this mindset of like, well, this happened to me, therefore I am. I wanted to take things seriously and understand that other people's opinions of me matters to the extent that, okay, so I want to make sure that I communicate that clearly. It doesn't matter. Okay, there was one of these guests that I had on my podcast that said to me that the only person who could judge whether or not he was a good father is his son. Meaning that, like, I can have an idea of who I am and who I present to the world by words, but my actions are going to tell the truth of who I really am.
Right.
So that's what I mean by opinions
It's
of
a
others
part of
matters. Yeah.
it's being versus telling.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
there's a construct of be, do, have. Be the person you want to be. To do then you'll do the actions that you want that person that you're being does,
Yeah.
and you'll have all the things you want. So
Yeah.
what I've been saying over the last year is I was doing everything I thought I needed to do in order to get the things that I wanted.
Mm.
And what I've learned is that those were all the things that were keeping me from getting what I wanted.
Yeah.
So the first question is, what do we really want?
Mm.
So everything that I've structured, my son is 24, and he's said to me since he was a little kid, I need this, I need that. We've had more conversations about wants versus needs than any other conversation on any other topic. And he would, every time he says, I need this, I'm like, really? He's like, Dad, I know. So the difference between a want and a need is a really powerful conversation, because as soon as you make something a need, I think our happiness is challenged by having needs. So my last book before The Joy Molecule was called Success Redefined. And the working title was When Wants Become Needs for Very Important Busy People.
Yeah.
Because we believe that we need these things. And I believe our happiness is challenged by not having these things. Yet, are they really needs? And in a culture that's abundant, which the United States is, then achieving these things or gaining these things to get them into your control, that's why wealthy people say, not all, the ones that have enlightenment, that money does not buy happiness, and the ones that are miserable might say it too. But the truth is that the accumulation of wealth does nothing for our mental state, except give us options of being able to pay people more to do whatever it is we choose to do. So if you're going to go on a spiritual journey, then you might be able to pay more capable people, a better psychiatrist, a better whatever. But even then, until you decide that, I talked before about the what, the who, and the why. And I had a conversation with my coach. He says, Larry, I have a different definition of what. And I know now, because I was talking about the ladder. So survival, me, and then ascension. So I'm calling this thing the ascension ladder. And in life, we are looking at what's better than something else. And what I'm explaining to my daughter, who's 25, on this construct of the ladder, is that there's no rung better than any other rung. It's just being aware of where you are on the ladder. And when you start to wake up to your position on the ladder, then your job as a human is to reach down below you and help the people below you up the ladder, and reach up above you to the people above you and ask them what they're seeing that you don't see. And that is life. It's not about accumulating. It's not about having more. It's about awareness. I believe we're here to wake up. And the reason there's so many life coaches is everybody's starting to wake up. And they're like, well, if I can make a living by helping other people wake up, then that's not a bad way to live. So I'm going to do that. But there's a lot of life coaches that I've met that are a mess themselves, and they have no idea who they are, but they're higher on the ladder than the people they're going to attract. So if you think about it that way, there's a life coach for everyone.
Yeah, I believe that.
Because there's always going to be people below you on the ladder, and there's always going to be people above you on the ladder. In the Joy Molecule, I have this construct of the Enough Academy. And inside the Enough Academy, not in the book, but I've created it after, I have the Enough Equation. So I'm in this really creative point in my life where I'm understanding what I truly am. And I'm a being that was given this body that has this mind and these feelings and certain gifts. And the way this mind works is when I meet somebody, I think of other people they would enjoy meeting. That's how this vehicle works. So I'm like James Bond, and I was placed in this superhuman machine and with no instruction manual. And the guy who built it, spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, him, her, thing, whatever, it's like a funny game. You're James Bond. I'm putting you in this vehicle, and you got to figure out how it works. But you're not the mind of the vehicle. You're not the feelings created by the vehicle, and you're not the capabilities that I give you. It's almost like this vehicle was given some gifts at birth. This vehicle was given some information it gathered over its lifetime. And once you get to the point where you get beyond your mind and you get to spirit and you get to knowing, then now this vehicle becomes a tool to figure out how do you get the most out of your life on this planet, because we only get it once. Here we think. I won't know any of this until I die. And even when I die, I might not know. But what I know, truly know, is that I have more peace today than I've ever had. And the reason I have more peace today is because I've done a handful of things that are really important for me. I have prioritized the activities and the modes of my life. Like my family's number one and relationships are number one. Work is important, and it's taken priority more than I would have liked it to. My physical being, all those different things I've categorized, and I know my values. Yeah. I tell people all the time, they're like, who can I introduce you to? And I say, it's not a who, I'm looking for a type of person. I call it a psychographic. Self-aware, world-changing, get shit done dolphin. So I like people that know who they are.
Yeah.
I like people that have self-awareness. I like people that want to leave the world better than they found it. I like people that get stuff done. I'm tired of people saying, well, I'm going to do this. And they sit on the sidelines waiting for somebody else to do it. And then the last piece is I have this construct of sharks, dolphins, and sharks that dress up as dolphins. So the sharks are the takers, the dolphins are the givers, and the sharks dressed as dolphins are the ones that come giving, but they really want something in return.
Yeah.
And in Adam Grant's give and take, that's called a matcher. So I have a really good detector for sharks dressed as dolphins, and I can see them coming. I can see them based on how they communicate, but I'm ultimately very aware of what I'm looking for. So all of this has brought me a lot of peace because I surround myself with people that I can have a conversation like, I didn't make you anything. So I had a situation in my current relationship and something happened and I felt uncared for. And I went back, I had to go. I spent a couple hours by myself and I went back later and I said, what happened earlier between us, I felt uncared for. It didn't mean she didn't care for me. I felt uncared for. That was my wound. To blame her, I could have easily said, you don't care for me. That's different than saying I didn't feel cared for. Not being cared for is my own wound. You don't care for me is a judgment and a criticism based on my wound. So I needed to be in a relationship with somebody that can have that conversation, not get angry that I felt a certain way because that's my own feeling. And that's what I'm developing in my life. So it's important to be able to own one's feelings.
Yeah.
It's important to be able to understand what's mine and to not blame others for anything that is mine. So in this journey we call life, we have all these decisions to make. But the question is, who is making the decision?
Yeah.
And if the decision is being made by my ego and my identity, which is the third lesson. So the book, The Joy Molecule, 8 stories of amazing people I've met since 2012 till now. So it's since I got back from Africa to today, I've met thousands of people. I meet a lot of people. That's one of my attributes as a human. And I just do. And it's an energy that I attract a lot of people. But there's 8 stories. Armstrong, the gentleman I met in Africa, who I ended up investing significantly in, who's now living here, 2 kids, trying to build a business between Africa and the United States. Armstrong taught me that my circumstances not define my joy. When I met him, he was making $1 to $2 a day, enough to buy a bottle of water and a piece of bread, and that was it. And he was happy. So his happiness and his joy were not dependent on his circumstance. The second story is Carrie Rich, who you would love. She's late 30s now. I think she's about to turn 40, 3 kids, about to have a 4th. And she was handed $2 million at 26 to go change the world by 2 different philanthropists, $1 million each. And she is amazing. She started something called the Global Good Fund. You can read about it in the book. But that lesson to me was my work needs to matter. I call that section redirecting capital. So in our life, we need to redirect capital. We need to take our skill set and use it for something good.
Yeah.
That conference I went to that taught me those 3 lessons, what is poverty, who gets to define it, and why are we trying to fix it, it's called Opportunity Collaboration. I went in 2012, 13, and 14. And I realized I was spending a week a year trying to change the world and 51 weeks a year trying to make more money so I can spend a week a year trying to change the world. And I'm like, this doesn't work for me. And that's when I walked away from my business. And that's when I said, I'm dedicating the rest of my life to making impact. So we go through this process. So second issue is my work needs to matter. The third issue for me is the biggest one. 3 challenged athletes, Jeff Mata, who I did a bike ride from San Francisco to San Diego. He's 100% blind. He was on the back of my tandem. So I rode a tandem from San Francisco to San Diego, 640 miles in 7 days.
Wow.
One of the most amazing
Beautiful
physical
journey, though.
experiences. Oh, spectacularly gorgeous. And try and explain it to a blind person.
Yeah. Oh my
We
gosh.
would make a turn going through a big sur and I'd say, holy shit.
Yeah.
And he would say, what's wrong? I'm like, it's more beautiful than the last turn. And I don't know how to explain it to you. And I want to explain it, but it's like the water's like blue and white crashing on these rocks that are like dark. And I'm explaining to this guy when we're going 30 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, going down a hill. And he thanks me afterwards for painting the picture because he went blind at 26. So we knew what things looked like. So that's the first story, is Jeff Mata's story. Amazing story. The
Wow.
second one, Moon Tucker, lost her arm in a motorcycle accident, became a Paralympic archer, first ever woman on the Paralympic
Oh,
compound
wow.
archery team. And the third story is Joe Delagrave. And Joe's going to
Mm,
write the next book with me, which is the title of that section, which is called The Identity Illusion. And I
mm,
said all of this to think what we were talking about earlier. When we think we are our identity and we think we are our ego,
yeah.
that's when life gets really complicated.
Mm,
When we know we have an identity and we have an ego, then that's healthy because we
mm,
need an identity to live in this world and we need an ego. And an ego is not evil, it's just not me.
mm,
And when you understand that, fourth lesson, perseverance, persistence, and patience, you need to just keep moving forward. And the fifth lesson is the Enough Academy, which is the Enough Equation, which is being your authentic self plus giving intentionally plus having, which is knowing the difference between a want and a need,
mm,
divided by comparison.
mm,
Comparison is the killer of joy,
yeah.
and comparison is the killer of enoughness. So let's go back to the ladder. If you're on the ladder, you're in survival mode, you know you're in survival mode, reach down people below you that are in worse survival mode than you and help them up. When you're in me, you help the people in survival mode come up to me. And when you're in ascension, you reach down to the people that are in me world and survival world and you try and help them up.
Mm,
And there's no better, there's no worse, there just is. And there's
yeah.
awareness of
Yeah.
where I
Awareness.
am.
Yeah. That's
It's
key.
about awareness. It's
Yeah.
not about having.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about accumulating. That's why wealthy people say it's not about the money. One of the most amazing experiences of my life. I'm at LaGuardia Airport and I see Bill Murray sitting by himself, famous actor. And there's an empty seat on each side of him. And there's thousands of people in the terminal. And there's no empty seats except for these two on either side of Bill Murray. Nobody wanted to sit next to Bill Murray. So I'm thinking, holy shit, it's Bill Murray. Let me go talk to him. So I go up to him and I ask him, what was your favorite movie to make? And I said, if you don't want to answer any questions, I'm happy to leave. And he said, no, I'm happy to talk.
Oh.
And I said, what was your favorite movie? And he says, what about Bob? I'm like, wow, Richard Dreyfuss, that was a great movie. I said, what about Caddyshack? He says, I hated Caddyshack. I did that movie. I was by myself. I wasn't on the crew. I didn't enjoy it. They flew me into New Rochelle like 5 or 6 times. I did it all by myself. I did not like that experience.
Mm.
And then I said to him, I said, sounds like a great life. And he looked me square in the eyes and said, nope, great career. He says, my life sucks just as much as anybody else's.
Wow.
This is Bill Murray talking to me
That's
in an
it.
airport, some stranger. And then he said something that totally rocked me to my core. He looked at me and says, most people tell me that they want to be rich and famous, and they don't. The rich part's fine. The famous part, there's stuff you lose that you can never get back.
Mm.
So imagine being that famous. You never know why somebody's coming into your orbit. Do they want something from you? Are they truly a friend? Are they
Yeah.
genuine? Or are they just putting on an act? And people put on acts for years just to get what they want.
Yeah.
That's all identity.
Yeah.
That's not being. That's not knowing what we are.
Mm. Wow. I mean, you've shared so much, and just listening to you, I mean, uh, thank you. Thank you so much for all of that. I'm rarely speechless. I can talk for hours. And I mean, I probably could continue to talk for hours. Don't get me wrong, but this is so beautiful on so many different levels. You have such a unique set of skills, but also I think that maybe the most beautiful thing about everything that you just shared is your ability to put words to very complex things. I think a lot of people might have some sort of understanding of some of the things that you're talking about, but I really do hope that people will be left with the same experience that I am listening to all of this, because I can, how do I even, it all makes so much sense to me. All of this is comprehensible. I understand what you're saying, and I can also visualize what this looks like in my own life. Throughout all of what you've said now, I have my own version of a story like that. And I think that is the beauty of communication, is that when you share your own story and you can put yourself into the communicator's feet, although you didn't walk that journey, that particular journey, but you know that you have your own version of that story. I think that is incredibly impactful. So Thank you so much for sharing everything. And I kind of walked with you along this journey. I mean, I've been to a lot of these places that you've described to. I used to live in San Francisco for many years. I used to live in Monterey, so I've been to Big Sur a lot. I've been down Highway 1, and I've also traveled throughout the world. I've been to the LaGuardia Airport. Like I can imagine you going up to that one of those seats, and also just the image of why didn't anyone want to sit next to one of the most interesting people in the room? Like maybe it wasn't, but maybe it was, like why is those seats
But
available?
you have no idea who you're sitting next to. You
Maybe
have no
that,
idea.
yeah.
My family used to laugh at me. So we, there were four of us, and my ex and my two kids would sit on one side of the aisle. I would sit on the other one because I had two opportunities to meet some people next to me that I could talk to. And I have no problem having a middle seat, especially if it's two smaller, petite people on either side of me,
Yeah,
because then I have an option to talk to two different people on a flight and how long it is. And
yeah.
I found the most innocuous question on an airplane to tell whether somebody's willing to have a conversation or not. And
Mm.
I've been on lots and lots and lots of airplanes, been to 42 countries, just about every 48 of the 50 states. I still haven't been to North Dakota or Alaska, but other than that, I've been to every other state. I'll probably get to Alaska. Maybe I'll go to North Dakota just to say I went there, but I'm not
You're
sure
not
there's
missing
much
out.
to see there. Um, so, but I sit next to these people on an airplane. I would say, "Are you coming home or are you going
Mm,
away?" And with that one question that is so innocuous and opening, that doesn't invade anybody's privacy or anything else, I can tell in 30 seconds whether somebody wants to have a conversation or not.
yeah,
Because they'll say, "Oh, going home," and then they go back to their book. Okay, they don't want to talk.
yeah.
Or if they do, they'll
Someone
ask
asked me
me.
that question. I have had some, like, for a moment that I was like, have I met you on a plane before, Larry?
Wasn't me.
I used to travel for work every week last year. So I would travel cross country with around the US. And I remember someone asked me that question.
It's a good question.
It is a
It's a
good question.
nondescript, easy to ask,
Yeah,
not invasive of anybody's privacy.
really
And
not.
if they want to talk, they'll say, "Oh, I'm going home. It's been a long trip," or
Mm,
"No, I'm leaving to go see my family." And then they'll start opening up. And then you
yeah.
start asking some questions or not. And I can tell very quickly whether I'm going to have a flight where I'm having a conversation
Mm,
or a flight where I'm doing my own thing, watching a movie. Or for me, I used to download TED Talks. It was the craziest thing. TED had the best app. I
mm,
would go to the app and it would do random downloads to my iPad of an hour's worth of talks. So I'd have a 3 hour flight. I would go down and do an hour's worth of talks, and I would do it 4 times before I left on the plane. So they're all downloaded to my device. So instead of watching movies, I was listening to people talking about really fascinating stuff. I think what we fill our mind with is really important as well.
mhm,
And if we get back to knowing what we are a being, a spiritual being having a human experience. And if your mind is thinking that, you're still a thinking being.
mm.
Knowing that you're spiritual and thinking that you're spiritual, you'll know the difference when you find peace.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that's what I think we're all seeking.
Mhm.
Michael
No,
Singer
for
is
sure.
one of my favorite authors, The
Oh,
Untethered Soul.
it's such a good book. I love that book. I got it as a gift once, and it was an amazing book. I love that book.
But he says all the time, the world is unfolding perfectly. It's just not meeting our expectations.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. Oh my gosh. You've touched upon so many beautiful things, Larry, and I must say that the feeling that I'm left with after all of the what you've just shared is that I'm way on my way on the right path. Like you're confirming to me that the ideas that I have in my mind right now, the things that I'm doing right now, the surrendering that I'm doing in my life, and the consciousness that I am focusing on, I'm on the right path right now. So I want to thank you for that, for kind of reminding me. It's conversations like this that I believe in God. So I believe that God is always showing up, giving me signs and communicating to me in ways that most other people might not even be looking out for. Not that it matters, but conversations like this reminds me that God is looking out for me and is consistently telling me that I know this is scary, Maggie, but you're okay. Because I don't know how you've already shared that you listened to my podcast a little bit, and what has happened to me in the year of 2025 is that I had this goal of I had because I'm from Norway originally. So born and raised in Norway. I lived here till I was 21, almost 22. And I moved to the US, and for the first time in my entire life, as an exchange student, felt a sense of belonging when I landed in San Francisco. And it was just because of the energy there. And also when I came to college and I was surrounded by all of the people there, I felt a sense of belonging that I never felt in my life. So I went on this quest for years to find permanence in the US, because I thought that my belonging was tied to the US, right? So it's this idea that shaped me and shaped all the decisions that I made. And I had to, from that moment on, I had to fight. It took me 6 years to get a permanent visa to the US. It was not that easy, but I did the job, like I did the work, and I ended up getting a permanent visa, which is an H-1B work visa. So I got that in 2024, moved at the end of September of 2024. And by 2025 was over, I had already moved back to Norway. And it wasn't because I just had this like great realization that I didn't have my sense of belonging there. Of course, I found that out way earlier. But it was just something about accomplishing a goal and having come to that point. But also it was all of the things that I learned along the way when I was on this journey, on this pursuit, is I got so much closer to myself and my truth, and understanding what is it about Norway that makes me want to disappear from Norway? What is it about the US that makes me feel like I belong? What are all of these things that are actually bringing out who I truly am? So what all of that led to was that I realized too that, because I am a certified life coach, and I have, similar to you, this sense of doing a really good job of putting words to emotions and communicating what it is that I'm going through. And I know that that is a skill that is helpful to many people, and it's been life-saving for me, which is why I want to pay it forward, because I know it is helpful. I've read so many books and listened to hours and hours of podcasts that saved my life in so many ways, and I have the ability to do that for others, and that's why I do what I do. I just finished writing my book called I Am Secure, and I cannot wait to get that out there, because it's such a jewel of something that I created. And I'm really proud of it, because I had spent so many years trying to get to the US as if it was the most important thing that could have happened. But what it actually led me to was letting go of everything that I thought that I wanted, and getting closer to me and how I can be useful in the world. So I decided to say no to my six-figure job, to my visa in the US, to all of my friends that I had there. I even, I didn't leave my boyfriend. He's still my boyfriend, but I mean, he's still in San Francisco, and now I'm in Norway. But what I wanted to do was to trust that God has given me a set of skills and a gift that it's an honor and a privilege to get to pay forward. So I decided to move home and to quit all of that, to focus 100% on my podcast, to write the book, and to do what I can do to be helpful and useful for other people, which to many people might be crazy and scary, because I had no security and certainty in making that decision.
There is no security and certainty in life.
I only had faith, and faith I have, and it is carrying me every day, and it's beautiful. And it's not that I don't have joy in my life, because I certainly do, but I was intrigued by your profile, and I wanted to talk to you, and also because I know that sometimes I do have a tendency to live a little bit in the future. Like I have had this tendency to live a little bit in what I'm trying to reach, and not do as good of a job of staying present. So that's why I'm saying that that's a focus now, is to look at what I have right here, right now, in the present moment, as opposed to where I'm headed, because I think a lot of us do that.
But time is a construct we make up as a human. Money is a construct that we've created. And you said something earlier about being on the right path. And as soon as we continue to label things as right or wrong, good or bad, we lose the ability to just be. So
Right.
you're on a path.
Yeah, I'm on a path.
You're on a path.
Yeah,
And you're having a beautiful experience.
it is.
And at the end of the day, that's the journey, is to stop worrying about attachment to outcomes.
Yeah,
There's no problem with having intentions and having desires and having all those things. And Singer says it all the time. Michael Singer says it, don't quit your job, don't get out of your marriage. It has nothing to do with those things. To me, it's about spiritual alignment when you're with another being.
yeah,
So if you're on a similar spiritual path, It's a lot easier to be than someone who has a lot of things in common. So it gets back to spirit versus accumulation. So our society is taught to find someone who accumulates the same way that you do. And I wish I could teach young people to align yourself with people that are on a similar spiritual path. So where you are on the ascension ladder, to me, is critical to figuring out who to be spending time with. If you're on a spiritual journey and your partner's not, I can promise you years down the line that there'll be a disconnect, because that to me is the most powerful journey, more than making money, more than anything else. It's about being at peace with oneself. And sometimes it comes with meditation. For me, I meditated with the same group for 5.5 years. It's been a few months since I stopped because it was 4:30 in the morning here on the West Coast, and I started sleeping different. My pattern slept. I started dating somebody that just disrupted my sleeping patterns differently. Not good, not bad. I just slept in a different way. And I didn't want to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to make that commitment. So I find other ways to quiet my mind. And it's not even quieting my mind. It's just to observe, being present.
Yeah.
And this year I'm really focused on the breath
Mm.
and learning about box breathing and learning about, I've been listening to the book by James Nestor about, it's called Breathe, and how breath affects our life. It affects our health, whether we breathe through our mouth or breathe through our nose, and deviated septums and why our faces are long. I mean, there's some fascinating stuff that we've learned to understand as humans that make us better people. Yet I'm not sure we're really, I'm not, I'm just having a human experience. And the opportunity to get away from, I get back to the 5 things. If I can be love all the time, if I can be grateful all the time, if I can live in abundance all the time, if I can be neutral, which means I attach meaning to nothing.
Yeah.
It just is. The famous story about the farmer whose horse runs off and the neighbor says, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Your horse runs off, comes back with more horses. You're so lucky." The son tries. That story is all about maybe.
Yeah.
It may be good, it may be bad, but my company's called 5 Dots because of Steve Jobs' commencement speech at Stanford in 2005. And he said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. And you have to trust in your gut, in karma, in something that the dots will somehow connect. You just have to believe that life is about following the breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
And what are the breadcrumbs right now? So right path, wrong path, there is no right or wrong. You're on a journey, and just follow the breadcrumbs and see where they take you, and trust that if you are open to it, that it's a beautiful journey, even when it gets hard. So you got to love the suck. I mean, at certain points in life, you truly understand that. But if you never understand it, you just don't understand it. And your mind will try to convince you of something different.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. You're right. I think the moral of the story of what I've shared on this decision that I made is that what seemingly would be very disruptive has led to become the most peaceful experience that I've had in my life too. It was when I let go of all of the things that I thought that I needed to be happy, that I experienced true peace. And it is really beautiful. I've never felt that before, ever in my life. And so be able to sit in the presence of that is, I'm immensely grateful, because I know what it's like when I'm striving, and I know what it's like when I'm suffering. And I know what it's like when I'm happy because of outside factors and not because of who I am, and yeah, because of me, essentially, because of something that happened or something someone did. And true peace is the best feeling that I've ever had in my life. It's really great. Yeah.
Cool.
Is there anything we haven't talked about, Larry, that you want to talk about?
I think we've covered a lot. If anybody wants to get in touch with me, my website is just 5-dots.com. My email, they can reach out whenever they want, Larry at LarryKesslin.com or Larry at Kesslin.com. They both work. I just enjoy this whole process of getting to know other humans and to find the ones that are out there that I can be of service to. And when we are service to the right people, some of them can pay. It's interesting. I've been dating somebody who has a 9-to-5 job, and I haven't had a 9-to-5 in 30 plus years. And I don't go to work. I wake up in the morning, stuff happens. There are things that produce income. There are things that provide, and even my income producing work is is incredibly fulfilling. I mean, I coach
Mhm.
around business development, I coach around life, and I have my books, and I just created a deck of cards called Spark Cards, because I think in the United States we ask too many what questions and not enough who and why questions. So
Mm.
4 suits, 4 different sets of questions, 2 to ACE, 2 being the least vulnerable question, ACE being the most vulnerable, and
Mm.
4 different themes: love and belonging, purpose and legacy, life and resiliency. I mean, it's just cool questions to ask of yourself, of your friends, in social environments, whatever.
Yeah.
But I believe that we don't really get to know each other. And it starts by getting to know oneself and to search inside. The shift in the ladder between me and ascension, that biggest shift is stop blaming and stop looking outside for all your answers, and start going inside and figure out what's happening inside of me that's keeping me from finding the joy and the peace that I want.
Mm.
That's the last thing I would leave your listeners with, is that when you stop looking outside for the answers,
Yeah.
that is when the journey truly begins. But most people stall at me.
Yeah.
They stall at love and belonging and self-esteem, and they don't look inwards, and they're always, something's happening to them,
Yeah.
and the world is affecting them in the worst ways because of whatever story they want to tell. And
Yeah.
it's just a story. It's not true.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You're so right. It's been incredible listening to you, Larry. I'm learning so much. I feel incredibly validated, and it's impactful. What you're sharing is impactful. I really I believe you know that. I believe you know that it is impactful. But nonetheless, I want to
Thank
share
you.
it with you, and thank you, and also thank you for sharing my podcast with your family. I'm so grateful, and I'm happy that you're a part of my journey, and that I get to share this story that you're sharing with my listeners, because I think that you're gonna help a lot of people who will listen to this episode as well. So thank you so much for your time. I'm really grateful.
Namaste.
Namaste.